Are you focused on being right? Is what you know best? Or are you possibly wrong? Hey, welcome back, Jeff Heggie, Daily Success Strategies. Thanks for being with me today. So yesterday, Ryan Gottfredson and myself talked about a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Today, what we want to do is we want to talk about an open mindset and a closed mindset. And what I want to tell you right now is you do need to go through the mindset assessment on this one to really find out where you are at. So go to jeffhagee.com/mindset assessment, where you're going to be able to get the assessment, where you're going to be able to get a link to the full interview with Ryan, and you're also going to get a link to his book. So strongly recommend that. But listen to us here talking about the open mindset and the closed mindset. All right, now let's talk. So again, we're going to share some information with you where you can go through one of Ryan's assessments to understand where you're at with each of your mindsets. And this one is one that was a slap in my face. Let's talk about open and closed mindsets.
Gotcha. Yeah. So a closed mindset is when we're closed to the ideas and suggestions of others, and an open mindset is when we're open to others' ideas and suggestions. And I think an analogy that I like to use is, how do we see, if our mind is a bucket, how do we see our bucket? Because if we see our bucket as full, we believe that what we know is best. What happens if we try to pour something into a full bucket? Well, nothing gets absorbed. It just runs off the side. So a closed mindset is when we believe that what we know is best, and we see our mind as being this full bucket. An open mindset, on the other hand, is we may have a lot in our bucket. We may know a lot, but we are consciously leaving room for the idea that we could be wrong. And when we leave that room for the idea that we could be wrong, when we pour something into that bucket, we're able to take it in and absorb it. And so to me, how this plays out is that those with the closed mindset, they become focused on being right or being seen as right. Those with an open mindset, they're not focused on being right. They're focused on finding truth and thinking optimally. And the only way we can get there is if we foundationally believe that we could potentially be wrong.
So because I'm dad and I said so isn't very open.
That's kind of the epitome, right, of a closed mindset there.
And one thing I loved that you said in the book, why is it so difficult for someone that's closed-minded to become more open-minded?
Well, it's tricky because I don't think that there's anybody who's closed-minded who thinks that they're closed-minded. That's the challenge. Is I think everybody feels like they're open-minded, and so this is one that I think is really tricky to be self-aware about. And in fact, one of the things that I've gotten into a little bit more since writing the book is a concept that is, I think, overlapping with this idea of open and closed mindset. But the concept is intellectual humility. And if anybody is interested in diving into that, there's a guy named Shane Snow. And if you were to Google Shane Snow and intellectual humility, he's got a great little self-assessment just on intellectual humility. And what was interesting to me and how it compares to my mindset assessment is kind of I saw myself as having an open mindset. And I took this intellectual humility assessment, and he looks at 4 different dimensions of intellectual humility. Well, I was really good with 3 of those dimensions, but there was one that I really struggled with. So if anybody wants to kind of dive deeper into it, I think that's a really good resource.
It's actually on my notes in front of me here. I had in big highlights. When we are closed-minded, it's difficult to see how we can be open-minded because we already think we are. So yeah, exactly what you said.
Yep.
So again, I guess the first thing is to recognize that you are closed-minded, figuring that out, and then we'll talk about your assessment and doing that. But what are the things that we need to do to become open-minded? And let's talk about why we need to do that, how it helps us either as an entrepreneur, as athletes, parents, whatever we're doing.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think it's helpful to use the bucket metaphor and just kind of investigate how full is my bucket, and am I leaving room for the idea that I'm wrong? So I think that that's really helpful. I think one of the reasons, or one of the places where people become closed-minded is in areas where there's tension between safety and truth. So, I mean, if we were to even go back 50 years or so to the civil rights movement, is there, of course, African Americans are trying to promote racial fairness in our country, really in the world. And while that, in a way, I think I see them as being seekers of truth. But also at the same time, they are getting a lot of resistance from the majority population, essentially whites, right? And because what the Black civil rights movement was partially doing was making whites feel unsafe, right? Their world is going, if they open up, equal liberties for everybody, well, my life as a white person is going to be different than what it used to be. And so the people who are the most ardent against the civil rights movement were the ones that were probably wanting to be, as they were being protective of the life as they knew it. And so I think that that's commonly why people become closed-minded, is because they are protective about something. That could be about politics, that could be about religion, that could be about just simply the way in which we go about doing something. And so one of the things that's helpful to me to think about is there are surely certain things that we need to take a stand on. We can always have a stiff back. The key to having an open mindset is to have a soft front. So even if we take a stand, we still have got to be willing to take in the ideas and suggestions of others and validate them. And if we're not, that's where we're being closed-minded. So it's not about the stands that we take, it's about how soft our front is, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you on that. So how does this, just trying to think how we put this because as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm also sharing this with all my athletes in the Confident Athlete program. How do we take this into perspective of athletics, into a team environment? I guess what are we protecting there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, of course, it's about, part of this is about teachability and your willingness to be coached. And again, it's not as if you always have to run with the ideas and suggestions of others, but are you at least willing to take those in and kind of sit with them, validate them, and go from there? So I think the athletes who have a tendency to have more of this closed mindset, they believe that what they know is best. What they're doing is they're putting a cap on how much they could learn, grow, and develop. And I think most athletes, there's certain people that they're willing to listen to, and there's other people that they're not willing to listen to. And I think what we've got to do is we've got to develop the cognitive and emotional sophistication to be okay receiving feedback and coaching from anybody, regardless of who they are, because every piece of feedback or even constructive criticism contains valuable information. And if we could treat it as such, then I think we can unlock more of our potential.
It's interesting you're talking about that, and it made me think of a situation last night. I was coaching a basketball practice, and one of the players, his opinion was that I was wrong. He had the better way of doing it, which he was closed-minded to what I was doing. But on the flip side, as soon as that argument, he started arguing with me on it, I was very close-minded to him as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it until just now when you were talking about that. And I think I've seen it a lot as a basketball coach. There's a lot of times that, especially, it's usually the better athletes, the talented athletes, that will be more closed-minded because they know better.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And so we've got to get to this cognitive and emotional space where we are okay, whether we're a coach or a player, with admitting that maybe we made a mistake. Right? And if we can't ever get to that place, what we're inhibiting is psychological safety. And if there's not psychological safety, we're not getting the most out of who we are as a player or our team if we happen to be a coach.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that. Now, again, go to jeffheggie.com/mindset assessment, because it's a way for you to really tell where you are on that continuum of a closed to open mindset. Because like we talked about, if you are closed-minded, you don't believe you are, and you need to be able to recognize where you're at. So whether you're an athlete, whether you're an entrepreneur, a parent, whatever you do, this will be beneficial for you to understand where you're at and get the report that Ryan sends that tells you how you can improve on it. All right. Thanks for being with me. Please do me a favor, share this with at least one other person today. Help me out that way. And I will be back with you again tomorrow.